We're all looking at, oh, it's me? Oh, we're all looking at you. Oops. What would you like to see done to improve the climate for business in the state?
Having been in business myself, one of the big things, there's a couple of things. I am a firm believer in the taking labor and industries out of the hands of the state and allowing private insurers to compete for it. I have a nephew who's an insurance broker in Shelton, who's also licensed in Idaho and one other state, and they sell L&I type policies to many of their clients. The clients pay about 1/3 of what they pay to the state. The employees who get hurt and injured and have claim settlement issues get it done quickly. Fraud gets uncovered a lot quicker. And so I think that privatizing labor and industries would be a real good thing for business in this state. And flipping the B&O tax from gross to net would, you know, and then I had a little thing that I did about a barber when the state legislature passed the new B&O taxes and they increased the B&O taxes on services, that I did a little study on it. If a barber gets $20 a haircut every quarter before the legislature met in 2010, his or her first 14 haircuts paid the B&O tax. For now it's 19 haircuts. That's a pretty interesting way to look at it, but you have to work another half a day to pay the B&O tax that was assessed in the 2010 legislative session. That's just wrong. If that barber were assessed a tax on the bottom line after he or she had paid the rent for the building, the cost of the licenses, the cost of their insurance, and their usually they're self-employed people, so they're paying 2/2 of Social Security for themselves. And by the time you get down to what you really made, then if the state took 1.5% or 2% of it, I don't think that too many businesses would complain about that. But to take that 1.8% off the top before you ever pay any of your other expenses is it's almost criminal.
It's wrong.
What is the government's role in protecting the rights of private property owners?
Well, that goes back to the 1776. It's part of our Constitution. It's the rights. It's why we're Americans. The government's role should be to keep the government away from us. There's reasonable things. You know, we have to protect, let's say, riparian rights, so that we don't steal a river from someone, or you know, drop your trees on someone else's property. You know, you don't want to put an airport in downtown Silverdale. If somebody happened to own, you know, 300 acres where the mall is, you might not want to put an airport there. There's some certain, that goes back to our responsibility of public safety. If it's a public safety issue, maybe the government needs to get involved. But if it's reasonable and rightful use of your own real property, I think we should have very little involvement. Zoning, sure, you don't want to put farms in the middle of towns, and you don't want to put a gas station in the middle of someone's farm either. You have to have a sensible, and we have a very, very detailed growth management act in this state that's probably over detailed, and it takes away a lot of property rights, and I think we've kind of gone way overboard on that in this state. And the country as a whole, really, in a lot of areas.
What is your opinion about the relationship between legislators and public employee unions?
I don't think the legislature gets as much of a crack at it as they should. I think a lot of these union negotiations are done in the governor's office, and the various agencies get back the contract that the governor negotiated with them. I see the, I look at PDC pages every day of my life these days to see who's taking in more money than me. And I see where the money comes from, and it comes from, a lot of unions are are paying for my opponent's election, and they haven't been calling me up and asking me how much I want. So there's favorable consideration, I think, between the Public Employees Union and legislators who will vote for issues that will ensure that they keep their jobs, that ensure that the bureaucracies that discussed earlier continue to grow. But we just can't sustain that. There's not enough people working and paying taxes to make that play out in years down the road. Not too many years either down the road. So I think the legislature needs to kind of bring the Public Employees Union up to date on what the facts of life are. You know, there's nothing wrong with paying a good person, a hardworking person, a good wage to do a job. And I don't care if it's clerking in the Department of Licensing, or plowing snow on Snoqualmie Pass, or driving a ferry boat. We've had some issues with that operation a little bit lately. By and large, there's lots of great people working for Washington State Ferries, and there's a few who scam the system and embarrass a lot of them. I've been a mariner. I'm not a baseball player, but it's hard work, you know, and it's not the same as going to work at Sears and Roebuck or something when you're on a ship. I think they're well compensated. They feel like they're well compensated. And of course, they're always looking for the best deal on their own labor negotiations. But we need to look for the best deal for the boss, which is the taxpayers of Washington State. And I think there needs to be some rolling back on the pensions, what we contribute to the public pensions. But as far as the legislature goes, back to the question, I can see why the unions would lobby with the legislature to make sure that their missions are met, but it's a negotiation. It's not a slam dunk for either side, and there has to be good reasons for increasing pay, and there has to be good reasons for the legislature to hold the line on this stuff until we can get this state back into a fiscal balance. We need to look at all kinds of different things.
Okay, well, this has to do with schools. One, do you think that that marketplace competition in schools would improve education? Two, do you think that there's any way that we could actually arrive at some competition? And three, where would you cut, where would you, in what segment of education would you think we could make the greatest savings?
Number three first, I think the administration and the construction of new schools is a huge, and by and large, most of those are done by a levy that happens outside of it, but.
And it's always for the children.
It's always for the children, and I come from a family of 7 children, and 3 of my siblings are school teachers. One's retired, rehired, which I have a little problem with, because I think that takes away from the ability of someone who is, some young person who's just finished college, got a ton of student loans, and while they're waiting for the rehire people in the schools to really retire, they have to go work at the Bon Marché, and they lose their edge that they have and their excitement that they wanted to bring. One of my employees had a wife that finished, got a teaching certificate, and waited 4 years to become a teacher. Well, in that school, there were teachers who had retired and were rehired because the district saves money by doing that because of the benefit situation. I believe that's the competition in schools, like from private schools and charter schools, and that's, I think we missed the boat when we didn't let Washington have charter schools. I see and read about other states who have done it. I think Colorado has some really good charter school situations, and I think we missed the boat, and I think that because we missed that boat, some of the current administration funding that's come down, it makes it very challenging for Washington to get their fair share of the federal dollars that are coming to help with education. Going back to having 3 siblings in education, and I've been talking to them and they to me a lot over the last few months. And what I'm seeing, and what I actually, have worked with some school kids in my Kiwanis group with the Builders Club and the Key Clubs and things, and I think we really, in this state, we need to trim what's going on in the administration and up on the hills of all the school districts. We have multiple assistant administrators. We have 7 school districts in Kitsap County. We have 1 in Seattle, and I'm not sure who teaches the most kids. And maybe Seattle should be too, but I'm sure there are a lot of, back to my theory on redundancy, I think there's a lot of regional things that maybe could be done by a separate group in Kitsap County that don't have to be done at CK, NK, Bainbridge, Bremerton, South Kitsap. But when I'm going back to my conversations with my sisters, the principal in a school is the captain of that ship. And if the principal has the tools and the authority to be able to make that thing work, and there's gonna be some teachers along the way that need to be let go, and there's gonna be teachers outside the walls who that principal's gonna know about, that, you know, if I can get my hands on him or her, and then our 3rd grade classes are gonna really excel, our reading programs will, those principals need to, and in, I don't know how many schools there are in the state of Washington, probably a couple thousand, I would think, from elementary to high school. And I've been to schools in my business, which was Olympic Printer Resources. I took care of imaging machines in lots of schools. And I went around, Lake Stevens had a very interesting school district where principals really had some authority that was given to them by the superintendent. And I saw some things in that school, just in the authority that that principal and vice principal had with the kids, that if I went to like Lake Washington School District or North Shore and some of our Kitsap schools, it wasn't the same. And you could walk into a school and feel, and the kids liked their principals, but they knew that this guy or gal was the person in charge, and it wasn't somebody, and the teachers respect the principal. And they have workshops. When they have an in-service day and the kids are gone, these principals really have a meeting. They don't, you know, well, it's noon, we've satisfied our fulfillment, it's time to go play golf, kind of stuff. So I really think that we need to get education to look at who's running each and every school, and whether you have principal retreat. I'm not sure how the system works right now, but I know that from my experience in business and my experience with my sisters, that they think that that's where the trouble is. If a principal has the right authority and can use it without getting in trouble, you know, and use it according to some rule structure, the schools will improve.